Good day, guys. Austin, and in this one today, what we're going to be setting up is the Nintendo DS on our systems. Now, to be more specific, we're going to be setting up the DeSmuME, or whatever you pronounce this emulator, up on our PCs. Now, as always, I just stand for getting the games to be working. We take this and push it to the limit because, well, we can. And, you know, it's 2016. We're a lot more advanced. We don't have to just pepper around on our original formatted games. We can actually soup them up a little bit and, well, play them to the full potential. So that's what this video is for today. We're not just going to get the games working. We're not just going to get the games working as good as we can on your PCs. What we're going to do is blow this up to the 2016 standards. So we're going full on 4K. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Right then, the DeSmuME emulator. What we're going to be doing today is configuring this on our Windows PC. This runs on virtually any platform out there. However, we're going to be focusing on the Windows version today. Of course, you can follow it along because an awful lot of the settings are identical all across the platforms. And what we're going to be doing is getting this set up for your PC. So of course, we're going to be starting from the lowest possible settings. In other words, the most compatible and the most fastest that will run on, well, everybody's computer that is powerful enough to run this emulator. Now, this is quite an old system and it's quite an experienced emulator, which means that you shouldn't have much problem at all as long as you've got a fairly recent computer. It doesn't make no difference if it's a full-on gaming rig, but you need to have at least some kind of, I don't know, power under the hood to be able to do stuff like this. Now, what we're going to be doing for those people who have more, I don't know, technologically equipped, is we're going to start to push this up and ramp it up to its full potential. So we're going to take off the stabilizers and we're going to push this up to full HD graphics. Then what we're going to do is push this even further. We're going to add on extras, we're going to add on everything that we can so it looks the most perfect we can get stable on our PC. Now, of course, everybody will be able to push this up to various different limits. That's why I'm starting from the bottom and we're going to push it to the limit. So without further ado, let's just get stuck into this. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is download the actual emulator itself. So in the description down below, there'll be a link, more than likely into this site, which is the DeSmuME 0.9.11 official website with this release at the top. And if you look at the date, that was 2015, that was over a year ago. This emulator is open source, which means that anybody and everybody can be working on this, and they do. There's actually almost daily builds released, and well, we want a part of that action, because although this is good and stable, it's got none of the features that we want to be messing with today. So, go to the download page here, and it will lead you to this place, which again will offer you the same download which was on the first page. You don't want that. You also don't want this link here, that's even older builds. Then we start getting to the good stuff, nightly builds. Now this is, trust me guys, we'll cover this later on, but these are more or less alpha builds going after bug fixes, increasing compatibility with certain games, bringing extra features in. Very good, however, very unreliable and can cause lots of issues. This one is, again, I would call this kind of beta stage where things are being progressed, things are a lot more stable. It's basically the melting pot that loads of people are added into. It gets a build or a build bot, which actually makes the build itself, and you can read what they've done, what they've not done, what they're trying to go for in the commit log next to it and the notes, and you can download and peruse at your own leisure. But again, they may give good performance and added features, but you probably will have some issues at some point. These are the ones which have kind of got a seal of approval, the official nightly builds. Now these are not good enough to be released as the full build, however they are still pretty good and up to date and have lots of the features which we are going to utilize today. So we're going to use these. Now I'm going to download the latest one, which is R5524. I want it for my version of Windows, which is Windows 64-bit, and now hopefully if my internet catches up it should download. Okay, while that's happening then, I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to make a new folder to put this in. So there's I'm also going to label this as per my build. So I'm going to put this as revision 5524, so I know what build this one is running on. Obviously as new builds come out, you can then switch and swap which ones are working better than others. However, let's work on this one. Right, I'm going to expand that folder. And then this is now finished. So let's open it up. This is compressed. It's a zip format, so you're going to need a compression tool to unzip it. So as it's a zip format, you're going to need WinZip, PZip, or something along them lines. Once that's done, then extract it to your location, wherever you're going to put it. Exit out of there. We don't need the website anymore. Okay, let's full page this bad boy. Now we've got the actual emulator that we're going to run. Quickly, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on it, right click, properties, and then going to go to the compatibility tab, and I'm going to give this administrator rights. As you can see, it's already done it because I've done it on earlier builds of this emulator, but if it's not already, do so. Click apply and then click OK, and that will give it permission to make files and folders on your system, because some people's systems have got more security issues than others, depending on what version of Windows and what kind of, how you're running it. Anyway, once you've done that, then you'll end up with this file, and once I click this, it will launch the emulator, but it will also start making more files and folders as I start to configure it. So, let's open it up. Don't want to do it? Yes. Right, this is the actual emulator. This is the screen that tells me what's going on in the computer world as it's actually running. And as you can see, it started making its first one, which is a configuration setting. But now what we need to do is actually get these configurations going. Everything I change in here will change in this configuration setting in real time also. So, right, first thing that we're going to do is the main tabs that we're going to use to configure these are these two, view and config. Let's stretch this out a little bit, make it a little bit bigger, so when we start gaming we can see what's going on. Okay, first thing we're going to do then is in the config, we're going to get this emulator running as fast as possible. Not the most compatibility settings, but the one that's as fast on everybody's systems. So for those of you running on low-end systems, you can get maximum frames per second to get this running full speed. That's our first mission. So go into the config tab, emulator settings. I want you to untick this general tab, and I want you to tick the CPU emulation mode. This will give less compatibility for all the games. A few probably won't work, however you probably will not come across those. However, with doing it the way we've just done it, it will speed things up, trust me. So then click OK, done. Next thing we're going to do then is go into 3D settings. Now in this tab, I want you to keep it as soft rasterizer. Now what that's doing is it's using the software to actually do the emulation. For those of you without dedicated graphics card and all that kind of stuff, it's probably faster for you guys. In fact, it's probably faster for everybody all round at this stage. Then what we want to do is untick all of these except enable textures. If it was to untick this, when we start playing a game, you would have a big white screen with a few shadows on it depicting the shapes of the game, so it's not exactly ideal. You need to keep this on to keep the game full of colour. Next thing to do is untick that. Then we want to untick these, and now this will keep it as the fastest settings we can get, so everybody now can play at full frames per second, hopefully, as long as their computer can allow it. Do not play with anything around here, keep this as 1, keep everything ticked as you can see now. Once that's done, click OK. Right, now we are up to stage. What I want to do now is maximize this, so I dragged it up to the top and that will maximize it on my screen. You may have to do something different depending on your version of Windows. Okay, now what we want to do is show you a game running. So go to File, go to Open ROM. Once you've found your location, it should find wherever your ROMs are. So basically, once you've loaded a ROM, it will remember where that location was and it will always show it. And here we go, here's my games. Okay, first off, I'm gonna launch a game which probably you guys can recognize, and well, it won't surprise anybody and you'll know what it's supposed to look like. I'm going to load Mario Kart first, I presume. ROMs or games come in 2 different formats, well, most of the time anyway. They will come in a NDS format, so in other words you've got the name of the game, then .nds at the end, and also you've got the zip format. Both of these are almost identical. In fact, inside the zip format is in probably the .nds. Now the emulator can run them both zipped and extracted. The issue is that obviously you save space by getting them compressed. However, these games are tiny, but then you've got to take into consideration that there's thousands upon thousands of these games. So although they may be small, once you start to add them all up, the size does go bigger. So by zipping them all up, you're saving space. The emulator can launch from both. There's virtually no difference in them whatsoever. However, there is a split second of where the emulator will uncompress, decompress, or extract the game before it launches. It's almost unnoticeable, but that's only on the actual launch of the game, and then it will always remember it. Okay, that's that done. What I want to do is actually launch this game. So hopefully when I click on this, there we go, the game actually launches, which is all good. At this point, I'm not giving any sound out because, well, Nintendo will start kicking off because I'm playing music on my YouTube channel that they own. Right, what I want to do to aid me in my mission to configure all this is go into View, go into HUD, go into Display Frames Per Second. Now, what we can see now is frames per second and a lot of details about this game. As you can see, this game, the first one is how many frames per second my computer is running at. So as you can see, it's running at 60 and it's running at 60 pretty damn well, to be honest. And as it's expected, because we're running at a pretty low settings at this stage. It's supposed to be running at 60 frames per second. That's the second figure. So this can change depending on what game you're running and what stage of the game it's at. So in the menu scene, you'll probably drop this to about 10, in some cases none, because it's just a fixed screen. So it could be 60 of none in that case. However, while the game is running, it should have a certain frames per second. These percentages is how much draw it's having on your system. So obviously once we start getting to the 90 or all the way up to 100%, things are going to start slowing down. You're going to have stutters and all that kind of bad stuff that we do not want. So you want to keep these as low as possible, but don't get afraid if it does get up to the 80s or even touching 90. Once you start getting into that stage though, you're going to have to start throttling back on some of the settings that we're going to be putting into place. So everybody's system is different, everybody's computer can get up to different levels, and we're going to be pushing this to the limit today. So first off then, what we want to do is show you, if you are even struggling at this stage, what you can do to help you. Now there is a cheat that we can get around, so by going into config, go into frame skip. Now you've got various settings that we can do in this level. One of them is tick the box limit frame rate. You want to keep that ticked at all time. The last thing you want to do is untick that. Basically what will happen is it will let this run as high as your computer would allow it. So first off, it will start burning out your computer. If you've got a lot of beef in there and it can easily run the game, it'll just keep on running it until it starts bringing your CPU to a stage where, well, it overheats pretty quick. So you do not want to be going for headshots in Counter-Strike. The last thing you want is too many frames per second. You want it to run it to the maximum of the game, so always keep that ticked. Otherwise you'll end up going in fast forward mode and you'll end up putting undue stress on your computer. So that's a big no-no. What you want to do though, if your computer is struggling at any point doing the configurations, is do the frame skip. Now this, you want to go up to a maximum of about 4. So if your computer starts to struggle, you're getting a few frames per second loss, things are starting to slow down a little bit, you can put the frame skip on. However, this has an impact in terms of visuals. So what will happen is, by turning it on to 4, is it's got a possibility out of every 4 frames to only display 1. So what will happen is it'll miss 4 frames, show you 1, miss 4 frames, show you 1. Now that's pretty good because it'll then get your frames per second up, but that's fooling you into thinking that you're showing all those, but you're not. This is hard to explain. You're missing 4 of those frames. So if your computer is being drawn to its knees and it skips every one of those, your game can look very jittery, especially it's a very 3D orientated game. So you want to keep this off or as low as possible. And my interpretation of this would be to avoid this if at all possible, unless you cannot run it even at this stage. If you're starting to push up your graphics a little bit, the last thing you want is to skip frames because it just looks silly. You may be fooling yourself into thinking you're getting 60 frames per second, but you're actually not, and your friends will notice, trust me. Okay, first thing that we're going to do is the old school way of ramping things up, the one that is less resource intensive. So first thing you need to do is go into the View tab, and then we can go into Magnification and Filter. Now when I start messing around with this, there is a bug in DeSmuME where, I don't know, the screen will either go massive or it will go tiny. At that point I will show you how to get it back to normal. Trust me guys, it's not you choosing the wrong settings, there is a bug in here, and if it does start to lose full screen, go out of its normal aspect or anything like that, I'll show you how to fix it. I cannot show you how at this point because it's not happened. It's just a bug which is well known in this emulator. So let's actually get on with it and, well, we'll cross that bridge if it comes. First things first then, these are the different filters that allow you to stop this being so pixelated. So as we can see, we've got the Mario Kart, it's just an image. So yes, it's got jaggies around the edge, it looks a little bit blurred, especially when you go into the bottom screen here, where you've got a very pixelated font and things like that. What we can do is go into View, go into Magnification Filter, and we can improve the actual image and the way it's represented to us, so it looks a lot smoother and, well, pretty awesome, to be honest. So the best way for 2D games, and trust me guys, you want different settings for different types of games, is probably 5x BRZ. However, these do have different impacts on how it affects your system. So going straight into this one could slow your computer down like no one's business. Obviously there's not much going on the screen right now, so it won't for me. So I'm going to choose this and watch the writing here and how clear it becomes. Did you see that? It looks a lot smoother. It looks like more cartoony. It looks awesome. And this is great for 2D games. However, once the emulator starts, now you can see, yes, it looks great at the bottom there where it's 2D. Everything looks nice and everything looks smooth. But at the top, it looks a little bit, well, it looks good, maybe a little bit better depending on your taste, but it looks very busy on the screen, especially when you start to blow this up. So if I go into View, Layout, and go to 1 LCD, it will blow up the top screen. And as you can see, it looks good, but it looks like, I don't know, like somebody's painting it on the screen, and when things start going pretty fast on the screen, it looks too busy for me. It's not my cup of tea. It looks good, but it's just not cricket for me. Okay, so there are other filters that we can go into. We can go into magnification filters. Different filters will be good for different types of games, 2D, 3D, all that kind of stuff. So let's apply this one. As you can see, that's probably better. What that does is blur the pixels together, so they're not as harsh on the screen. That's probably the best one that you're going to find for the 3D orientated games by using the magnification filters. And then of course you've got all kinds of stuff going on, such as scan lines, so it looks like an old type of computer or something. Magnification filter. Yeah, there's all kinds. Experiment, see what suits you best. But for 2D games, I would say 5x BRZ. For 3D games, I like the HQ or the EPX kind of stuff. It's nice. Right, so we made it look good, but what we didn't do is turn this into HD. It's still very much pixelated. We can kind of paint over the cracks, which is realistically what we just did. However, we're not turning this up, especially not with resolution. One way of doing that is using some added features which have just been added, well, not so long back, to be honest. So, let's utilize those. First thing we need to do then is turn everything back to normal. So go into your magnification settings and turn that to normal. So we want to have a blank canvas at this point. Also go into your config tab and go into 3D settings. Now at this point it depends on how your system is coping, but it's good at this point, if you can, and it doesn't have too much of an impact, to start ticking these boxes again. Remember, tick the box, see if it looks alright, see if it performs alright, more importantly, and then work on your next one, keep on going through. I'm not going to go through each one of these boxes because we'll be here all day. It doesn't have that much of an impact, however, visually, again, not that much, but with certain games it does. It all depends on the certain games that you want to play, so yeah, I can't go through every combination in this video. Right. What we're going to do now is start souping this up a little bit. So I'm still going to keep with soft rasterizer. At a certain point we're going to have to switch to OpenGL 3.2. Now it depends if you guys have got a dedicated graphics card or if you haven't. My CPU is running good enough that I could probably soup this up and still get decent frames per second using soft rasterizer. Some of you, especially if you want to get into the more complicated side of things, add in more filters, add in more scales and stuff, you definitely going to have to go into the OpenGL. Again, this is different for everybody, but for now I'm going to keep soft rasterizer to see how far I can get. Right then, so I know I can run this so far, and there's the bug. There it is. When you start messing around with certain settings, it will change the well, the size of your screen. It will, I don't know, sometimes it'll go massive, sometimes it will go really small, but that's the bug that I was talking about earlier on. As I'm going through this, it might happen. The best way you can do is, once it minimizes, just click it back up to the top and hopefully it should snap back to its present resolution. You may have to go into Magnification Filter, set it back to normal. You may then also have to go into Config, 3D settings, and change back to whichever one you had before, then snap it back to the top, just to get it so you can start messing around with it again. It's not your fault, it's not the settings that you're choosing, it's an actual bug with the emulator itself. As you're configuring it, it doesn't like sizes of the screens, it doesn't like resolutions, and it can become very confused quickly. Just do what I said and you can carry on, and well, let's carry on anyway. Let's start souping this up. So what I want to do now is do the resolution. So HD prescaling, what this is doing is it's kind of imitating the internal resolution of the actual games. So at this point the actual screen will not change at all because that's a picture. The resolution will never change on that. So 2D games are hardly altered. However, once I click OK, there's the screen again. Once I click OK, this starts running and we go into the 3D mode. Look how clean this now will become. You see? It doesn't affect anything on the 2D world, but in the 3D world, turning up the resolution, turning up the HD stuff, it really does get it running really smooth. And to be honest, because this is so low quality in terms of the original resolution, you don't have to pump it all the way. Yes, you can go all the way up to maximum, and you can pump this all the way to 4K, but because the details on the textures are that low, it doesn't make any difference. But what we can do, and we'll do that, is go in there, go into 3D settings again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go for the GL texture scale, and we're going to turn this up. Now I believe that this doesn't really go into any kind of, I don't know, this doesn't show that much. In fact, it may not show at all unless I actually choose the OpenGL driver. But we'll click it in anyway, see if this has any impact. I'm going to go for 2 first. And this should improve the resolution of the actual textures themselves. Again, there we go, bug. So this is all just adding extra features to the games, and again, this may alter some games massively. Like this is a 3D game, so this one really does love the HD textures. However, something like an RPG, which is mostly 2D, you won't get that much of a change because the textures are rendered in different ways. This one gets completely rid of the jaggies on the 3D game. So again, we're going to config, 3D settings, and we're going to pump this up. I'm going to pump this up. How far does it go? I think it's 5, which is like, I don't know. That's high. What I'm also going to do is tick all these boxes and see how far we can push this. Going to OK. Ah, there we go. Now I think I am drawing this to its knees. Look, I'm on 21 frames per second. But look how clean this looks now. I mean, of course, you've still got the original resolution, you've still got the actual detail of the original game, but in terms of the jaggies on the edge, there is nothing at all. What I can do, though, now is go into config. I'm going to see if me changing to my OpenGL, which will utilize my dedicated graphics card, not to its full potential, but it will still be taking some of the strain from the CPU. Hopefully, I should get a little boost in my frames per second. And there you go, guys. It is. That is it running now in 4K. We are running at 46 frames per second, 60. Of course, you know, I've got everything now turned on to maximum, and it is bringing my computer to its knees by doing this. However, what I could probably do now to show you the influence of that frame skipping is go into config, frame skip, bring out to 4, and now it should take a little bit of the strain off there. So hopefully I should get up to top speed, and by not missing so many frames per second, because my computer is almost there, it doesn't have to miss them all, I might be able to get away with this. We'll see. Let's go. Come on. upgrade to 60. I'm on 59, 60, and there we go. As you can see, that is pretty damn smooth. I have pushed this now to the limit. I am running 60 frames per second. I'm not seeing that much of an impact. I am seeing some flickers on my frames per second, but that's expected and quite minimal. I would not notice that in any kind of gameplay. And look how clean that looks. That's the main thing. So that's it, guys. That is us pushing this emulator to the limit. I think we've covered just about everything that I could. Now it's just up to you guys to see what is good for your system, what is good for your setup, what kind of taste you've got, and of course, well, whatever games you play. Now, what you can now do is actually blend those together. So you can go for maximum HD and you can put a filter on there. So you've got the best of the 2D world and the best of the 3D world. However, again, this has huge impacts on your PC. So a lot of this does depend on what kind of beef you've got inside your PC. Is it a big cow or is it just a moo cow? I don't know. But that's it for today's tutorial, guys. In the future, look forward because I will be covering more of, I wouldn't say this is a retro emulator, but it's more of the older school ones, which, well, we haven't been covering as much, so I want to get more into these. I think the next one will be the DeSmuME one, because I want to get into the arcade side of it. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, guys. It's been a pleasure as always. Please like if you like this video. Please subscribe. Please do the thing that people normally do in this YouTube malarkey kind of world. But most of all, guys, most of all, you have a good day. Laters!